I think it's about time we go onward and upward and do a card comparison of the Hoenn gym leaders and Elite Four. I've done some rankings of the Kanto gym leaders where I compared their red and blue teams with base set, jungle, and fossil, and then I did it with the Johto leaders by using cards from the Neo sets. But as far as Hoenn goes, well, yeah, they went absolutely nuts with Gen 3 sets. There are a total of 16 EX sets to coincide with Gen 3, so there are certainly going to be a lot of Pokemon each. So let's keep these comparisons simple. The first Gen 3 games were Ruby and Sapphire, and the first Gen 3 TCG set was EX Ruby and Sapphire. If the Pokemon exists in this set, it's the one I'm going with. If the Pokemon is not in that set, then I'll keep going in release order of the EX sets until the first one appears. I'll explain it all as I go, and I think this would make for the best comparisons for the Hoenn gym leaders. Otherwise, this could get muddy pretty quick. Also, I think it's best to not count the Pokemon EX cards and just stick to the standard mons for comparisons. I already have plenty to choose from. And lastly, I know almost none of these cards, so this will pretty much be my introduction to them. I stopped playing well before these came out. So, with that said, let's rank some Hoenn gym leaders by their first EX set cards. Right after I do a quick mention of my Patreon. I've had a handful of people join since mentioning it in my last few videos, so a tremendous thank you to those people. If you don't know, I give out a few nifty gifties of some Paraspectre stickers and cards, and assign virtual cards in number order for shoutouts. As of the time of me editing this, here are the next ones to be assigned. Check it out at patreon.com/Paraspectre if you want, and if you don't, then let's look at some Hoenn teams. Number 8, Brawly. The second gym leader, Dewford Town's Brawly, starts it off in last. He doesn't have an awful team or anything, but his team of Machop and Makuhita are, in my opinion, the least exciting. Both fighting types with a psychic weakness. Let's see what we got. The first Gen 3 Machop is from EX Hidden Legends. It has 50 HP and 2 simple damage dealing moves. Knuckle Punch just does 10 damage, and Karate Chop works like how it did on base set Machoke. It does 30 damage, minus 10 for each damage counter on Machop. So it's almost like Karate Chop is super strong at first, and then there will likely come a point where Knuckle Punch is the only move you can use. It's an interesting one that benefits Machop if you can keep it on the bench or healed, more so than active and taking damage. Brawly's other Pokemon is the debut of Makuhita. Makuhita's first card appearance is an EX Ruby and Sapphire, and what? There are 3 options in that set alone? Dang, they went hard with promoting some of these newcomers. They all have the same stats, so it all comes down to the moves. Makuhita 56 is extremely simple and it only uses colorless energies. Slap Punch does 10 damage, Lunge Out does 20. That's it. A by the numbers card that can go into any deck. Makuhita 57 has Fling, which acts as a gust of wind, but up to your opponent. They switch out their active one with a benched one. And then Low Kick just does 30. I actually kinda like this one. Makuhita 58 only has one move. Fake Out does 10 and paralyzes with a heads flip. Causing status conditions are somewhat rare with the fighting type, so this is something. I feel like none of them are outstanding, but each of them have a pretty decent pro over the others. I think if I had to pick one though, it's number 57, just because it can deal the most damage with Low Kick, and you can continuously rotate the active one if you want. Again, not an awful team, still better than Brock's cards, but Brawly still comes in last for me. He's an early gym leader that doesn't quite have Machoke, Machamp, or Hariyama yet, so not a big surprise. Number 7, Roxanne. Next up is the first gym leader, Rustboro City's leader, Roxanne, the rock-type leader who is channeling her best Brock impression. They both use 2 rock Pokemon, one even being a Geodude. But instead of boring old Onix, her other one is the new Pokemon, Nosepass. And both of these are also fighting type cards. As for Geodude, the first Geodude to appear in the EX sets is in the 3rd set, EX Dragon. And that set actually has 2 Geodude options. Geodude 55 has 50 HP with a weakness to water. Yeah, Geodude's weakness changed to water here instead of grass. Light Punch deals 10 damage. Pebble Throw has you deal 10 damage to any of your opponent's benched Pokemon. So if you just slap 1 fighting energy on Geodude, you deal 10 to any Pokemon really. Kinda cool. Geodude 56 has everything the same except 10 less HP and only 1 move. Steady Punch does 20 with a heads flip, 10 with a tails flip. Extremely straightforward here, but I would personally go with that first one, just because of that bench damaging siren song that I can't resist. It's one of my favorite game mechanics. And then for our nose pass option, we have one from EX Ruby and Sapphire. It has 60 HP, and what's cool here is that it only uses colorless energies. Invisible Hand allows you to search your deck for any card, nothing specific, as long as your opponent's active Pokemon is evolved. And Repulsion has your opponent return the defending Pokemon and all cards attached to it back to their hand if a heads is flipped. If they don't have any benched Pokemon, then it does nothing. Nose Pass is pretty sweet actually, but it doesn't actually deal any damage. It's half utility for your deck and half disruptor for your opponent. Roxanne really isn't much better than Brawly here, but I think her team would be slightly more fun to use. Honestly though, they're pretty interchangeable for me, and both are definitely at the bottom. But hey, all four are basic with no evolving needed, so there is that. Number 6, Wattson. Coming in next is Mauville City's electric leader Wattson. Wattson uses 3 OG Kanto Pokemon actually, all lightning type cards, Magnemite, Voltorb, and Magneton. And oh boy, there are 3 different Magnemite cards from EX Dragon, their first Gen 3 appearance. Number 61 is almost the exact same card as the one Makuhita I just talked about. It has 2 moves that only use colorless energies. Rollout does 10 damage, Hook is for 20. Makuhita has more HP, but this Magnemite has a resistance to metal, but really not much more to say about it at all. Number 62 has 50 HP and 1 single move. Random Spark has you deal 10 damage to any Pokemon for a single lightning energy, and well, that's it. It does bypass lightning resistances, so that's a huge perk for it. Number 63 is extremely similar. Thundershock has the same cost and deals 10 damage with paralysis on a head's flip. So in comparing the 3, one uses colorless with simple damage, one can hit any Pokemon you want, and one can cause paralysis. And yeah, you probably know which one I'm going to pick. Magnemite 62 gives you the option of focusing on any one you want to start whittling it down. None of them are great, but this is my list. You would technically need a second one for Magneton too. Only one Voltorb option here though. The EX Hidden Legends version has 40 HP and 2 moves. Recharge allows you to search your deck for a lightning energy to attach to Voltorb, and Rolling Attack does 20 damage. But since there's no Electrode here, searching for that lightning energy would be to just use Rolling Attack, so there's really not much to go with here. But Wattson's main heavy is Magneton, and there are 2 of them in EX Dragon. Number 17 is honestly pretty good. It has 1 move and a Poké Power with 70 HP. Magnetic Field says, once per turn, you can discard a basic energy in your hand to recover up to 2 basics from your discard pile, unless Magneton has a status condition. That's huge because its only move is Magnetic Force. It does 10 damage times the number of energies on all of your Pokemon. Yeah, that's awesome, and it clearly makes Magneton much more powerful for the late game. Number 35 has 10 more HP with 80 and 2 moves. Ram does 20 damage, and Triple Smash does 20 damage for each heads on 3 flips. It's kinda tough because this is the better Magneton for straightforward damage, but the other one excels if you have a lot of Pokemon and energies out. Unfortunately for that one, Wattson only has 3 total Pokemon, so even though I like number 17 more, I think number 35 is better for his team overall. Also, Magneton is now our first evolved Pokemon. But even though the Magnemite options aren't incredibly exciting and Voltorb really isn't great for this team, Magneton does put Wattson above the other 2 leaders for me. Number 5, Tate and Liza.
I need a nickname that makes people light up.
You mean like Liza?
Yeah, the 7th gym leader is one that falls in 5th place for me, but that's mostly because they only use a team of 2, although they're pretty fun cards. Tate and Liza are the twin psychic type gym leaders of Moss Deep City, and they go the route of using the Sun and Moon duo, both different card types actually. EX Sandstorm Lunatone is a psychic type with 60 HP with a weakness to psychic. It has 2 moves and a Poké Power. Lunar Eclipse says, if you also have Soul Rock in play, Lunatone can become the Darkness type, unless it has a status condition. Cosmic Draw allows you to draw 3 cards, but only if one of your opponent's Pokemon is an evolved one. And then Lunar Blast does a simple 30. It's a pretty fun one for a basic type that can potentially change things up if you also have a Soul Rock in. And well, that's exactly what Tate and Liza's other Pokemon is. EX Sandstorm Solrock is a fighting type with 70 HP and a weakness to grass, so not only are they different types, they have different weaknesses too. It also has 2 moves and a Poké Power. Solar Eclipse says if you also have Lunatone in play, you can change Solrock's type to Fire, unless Solrock has a status condition. So with both, you can pretty much adjust their types among 4 options. And it also has Cosmic Draw, exactly the same as Lunatone, that has you draw 3 cards if your opponent has an evolved Pokemon in play. And then Solar Blast does a simple 40 damage. So Solrock hits harder than Lunatone, but takes 1 more energy to do so. So this would be the weird case of a 2-type deck of Psychic and Fighting, in which you can also change their types to Darkness or Fire if they're both out. Kinda cool that you can shift things to be in your favor. And they're both basic Mons, so not bad. Unfortunately, since it's only these 2, I don't think they should be ranked much higher. You can't really downplay that Lunatone and Solrock can be good to go right away with no evolving needed though. I also personally love the concept of these 2, so I think it's a fun duo and overall better than Brawly, Roxanne, and Wattson. Number 4, Flannery. Coming in 4th is the Fire-type leader Flannery, who uses 3 fire Pokemon, but 2 are the same. We have 2 Slugma and a Torkoal. But since there are 2 Slugma, let's count the first 2 releases. EX Dragon Slugma has 50 HP and 2 moves. Ram does 10 damage, and Luring Flame has your opponent choose a benched one to bring in to replace the active one, and that Pokemon is now burned. I actually really like this one for a basic common. Burn is like poison, but it all depends on a coin flip. Heads, nothing happens. Tails, it takes 20 damage, and this happens each turn. On top of the switch out too, that's pretty sweet. Slugma from Team Rocket Returns has the same stats. Singe causes burn with a heads flip, and Heat Tackle does 30 damage and Slugma takes 10 damage. I don't know, I kinda like these 2 Slugma. They aren't too bad for simple commons with cheap moves. Plus they can both cause burn. Unfortunately though, no Mag Cargo here. Torkoal from EX Dragon has 80 HP with a 3 retreat cost, so all 3 of Flannery's retreat costs are kinda high with 2 or 3. Power Generation has you bring 2 basic energies in your discard pile to your hand. Scorching Smoke causes instant burn, and then you discard a fire energy on Torkoal with a Tails flip. But I mean, it only costs 1 fire to use, and then you can recover energies next anyway. Torkoal can't actually deal any damage, but it is there to annoy your opponent with burn and recover energies that you may lose. And with 80 HP, it's gonna stick around a while. Torkoal isn't flashy, but it's definitely a tanky utility mon. Not a bad team of 3. Her entire team never requires any more than 2 total energies per Pokemon either, and they're all basic. It's a team that's more so in it for the slow burn. Bad pun intentional. Number 3, Norman. For 3rd place, I went with your own father in Ruby and Sapphire, Norman, the normal type leader, and he can be kinda tough to deal with in those games. Here we have 3 colorless types, all from the same evolutionary family of 1 Vigoroth and 2 Slaking. Vigoroth from EX Ruby and Sapphire has 70 HP and 2 moves. Fury Swipes does 20 damage for each heads on 3 flips, and Rage does 20 plus 10 more for each damage counter on Vigoroth. Yikes, not a bad start. It's all about dealing damage, typically getting stronger the longer it stays in. But Norman also uses 2 of Vigoroth's evolved form, Slaking, so let's add the first 2 different Slaking cards. Slaking from EX Ruby and Sapphire and EX Power Keepers is actually the same card, so let's only count these for one of them. It has 120 HP, oh my, and also a 3 retreat cost. It has 1 move and a Poke Body, which is a new twist on Pokemon powers. Basically, Poke Bodies are like Pokemon powers, but always in effect. Lazy has your opponent be unable to use any Poke powers if Slaking is the active Pokemon. And then, while costly, Critical Move does a mighty 100 damage, then you discard a basic energy on Slaking, and then it can attack on the next turn. Very true to what Slaking is, but also it's dishing out 100 damage. Not too many Pokemon are going to survive that, so it can take a well-earned rest next. Slaking from EX Deoxys has the same stats. This one has 2 moves plus a different Poke Body. Lazy Aura has Slaking resist 30 damage from your opponent if it was hit by a Pokemon EX. Weakness and resistance is applied after. Not a bad bonus. Amnesia does 20 damage, and then you choose an attack the defending Pokemon has, and they can't use it on the next turn. If they only have one attack, then they are in for a world of hurt. And for another costly move, Lazy Headbutt does 70 damage and Slacking goes to sleep. So, yeah, Norman's team is quite good. Of course, for this team, you would need 3 total Slack Off and 3 Vigor Off, but 1 usable, and 2 of them just to get to the Slackings. But they're still pretty beastly. Even with required evolutions here, yeah, Norman has to make the top 3 for me. Number 2, Winona. 1 and 2 are pretty close for me, but I ultimately went with 4 Tree City's Flying type leader Winona for 2nd place. She's actually the only Hoenn gym leader to use a team of 4, and it would be a 3 type team. Here we have Swellow, Pelipper, Skarmory, and Altaria. EX Ruby and Sapphire Swellow is a colorless type with 70 HP, 1 move, and a Poké Power. Drive Off allows you to force your opponent to pick a benched one to switch with their active one, unless Swellow has a status condition. Definitely right up my alley. Then its only move is Wing Attack, dealing 30 damage. It has a boring basic move, but you can constantly be using Wing Attack all of your opponent's team while only needing a couple colorless energies, so this is still a real fun one because of its Poké Power. Pelipper from EX Ruby and Sapphire is a water type with 70 HP and 3 moves. Say what? But I'll mention its first move last. Spit Up does 30 damage. Very simple. Swallow does 20 damage, and then you heal Pelipper for the same damage dealt. And then on top of those moves, it has Stockpile, which increases Spit Up's power from 30 to 70, or increases Swallow's power from 20 to 60. Pelipper is awesome. Seriously? I think I love this card. Skarmory from EX Dragon is a metal type with 70 HP and is the only basic Pokemon on the team. Pick On says if your opponent has at least 6 cards in their hand, you choose every card to put back in their deck until they have exactly 5 cards left. That could be a huge strategy killer if you get lucky enough, or, not even usable if they don't have at least 6 cards. Power Count does 20 unless all of the combined energies on your Pokemon are less than your opponent's, then it does 50 damage. Yeah, this is a pretty unique card, I gotta say. Both of Skarmory's moves are dependent on the status of your opponent's situation. And finally, Winona has Altaria for her main one, and the EX Dragon version is a colorless type with 80 HP, weak to colorless. Wait, what? Resists grass and fighting, and has a 1 retreat cost. Yeah, did I mention how unfamiliar I am with these card sets post Team Rocket? I get that Dragon got grouped into colorless for most of the early sets, so I see what they were going for, but it's still weird to see this weakness to colorless. Dragon Dance increases the power of your active Pokemon's attack on the next turn by 40, even if it isn't Altaria. And then for 1 water and 1 lightning, Dragon Song does 30 and both active Pokemon are asleep. What a crazy card, but you know what this means. You would need 3 different types of energies for Winona's team here of water, lightning, and metal. But man, they would be some fun cards to use if you can pull it off. Also, you'd need Tailo, Wingull, and Swablu here in order to use the evolved forms. I'm comfortable with Winona at number 2, but that leaves number 1, Wallace. Yeah, probably not a huge surprise to have the 8th gym leader be number 1, but the games are typically structured this way. The 8th gym leader is supposed to be the strongest. So we have Sitopolis City's water leader, Wallace. And as an asterisk, I'm sticking to Ruby and Sapphire only here because the gym leader is actually Juan and not Wallace in the Emerald version. They almost have the same team anyway. Wallace has a league-high 5 Pokemon of Luvdisc, Celio, Seaking, Whiscash, and Milotic. And yes, they are all water type. EX Hidden Legends Luvdisc has 60 HP and 2 moves. Loving Draw has you draw cards until you have the same amount as your opponent. Sweet Temptation has your opponent choose a benched one to switch in, and then that one takes 10 damage. That seems to be a trend with a lot of these cards where your opponent chooses who gets roped in. But yeah, with Luvdisc being basic, you really only need a single water energy for it to be good to go with whichever move you want to use. It's definitely the weak point of the team, but it could prove to be useful at the right moment with a chance to draw some quick cards too. EX Hidden Legends Celio has 70 HP with a weakness to metal, so that's a little different. Super Icy Wind does 10 damage to all of your opponent's Pokemon, ignoring weakness and resistance, for a single water energy. Awesome. Love that. And then Skull Bash does a set 50 damage. Dang, this Celio is pretty sweet. You know me, I love damaging benches, and this one does it on the cheap. Seaking from EX Ruby and Sapphire has 70 HP and 2 moves. Water Arrow has you deal 20 damage to any one of your opponent's Pokemon, ignoring weakness and resistance. Again, love that move a lot. Fast Stream does 30, and then you move 1 energy on the defending Pokemon to the other defending Pokemon, unless your opponent only has 1. I had to read it a couple times to register what this meant, but even still, this Seaking isn't too bad. EX Dragon Whiscash has 90 HP with 2 moves and a Poke Body. Submerge prevents all damage done to Whiscash if it's on your bench by opponent attacks. Definitely a nice bonus. Then it has Surf doing a set 30 damage, and Magnitude does 60 damage, and then 10 to every benched Pokemon, not applying weakness and resistance. However, it does take 1 fighting energy to use. Yeah, all of a sudden this is a 2-type team. But yeah, also a really fun one. Whiscash is kind of a powerhouse here, not really what I expected. And finally we have the mighty Milotic, with the EX Hidden Legends version having 100 HP, 2 moves, and a Poke Power. Healing Shower gives you the option of healing every single Pokemon in play completely, excluding Pokemon EX ones, and only when you evolve Phoebus into Milotic from your hand. Wave Splash does 30 damage, and Distorted Wave is a weird one. It does 80 damage, however, you heal the defending Pokemon by 30 before dealing the damage. It's like you're pretending to be its friend right before obliterating it with 80 damage. Yeah, Milotic is cocky. But yeah, I think this would be the best team of the Hoenn gym leaders. It is a mono-type water team, plus that 1 fighting energy needed, but there are a few different weaknesses here of lightning, grass, and metal, so it's not like it would entirely fail against a lightning deck or something. Love Disc is the only basic one here, so you would also need a Spheal, Goldeen, Barboach, and Phoebus here. Even still, Wallace's team holds up pretty well, I gotta say. It's a lot like an Elite Four team. Speaking of, we gotta discuss those 4 next. Per tradition, each Elite Four member uses 5 Pokemon, which kinda makes comparing them more fair. And actually, every single one of them is a Hoenn Pokemon, which is pretty cool, I didn't realize that. Number 4, Drake. Yeah, that's right. The final Elite Four member and Dragon Trainer is in last for me. Let me explain. Drake is one who continues to complete the similarities to Kanto's Elite Four. Both Elite Four have Ice, Ghost, and Dragon Trainers, so here we are. The Lance of Hoenn. Drake uses Shelgon, Altaria, 2 Flygon, and a Salamence, all of them being the colorless type, so that's kinda cool. Except almost all of them take different types of energies, so let's see what we get. And oh lordy, right off the bat, EX Dragon has 3 Shelgon options, 2 uncommons and a rare. But since he uses 1 Shelgon and you'd need the other for Salamence, I guess you can choose 2 here. What's weird is that the 2 uncommons have no weakness or resistance, but the rare has both. Let's look at them in numerical order. Shelgon number 20 has 80 HP, weakness to colorless, and resists both fire and fighting, kinda cool. And it has 2 moves. Scrunch is simple, prevent all damage by your opponent on the next turn if a heads is flipped. And then Rolling Attack does a simple 50 damage, which includes both a fire and water energy there. So just going off of this card alone, this would be a fire and water type deck so far. Shelgon 41 has 70 HP, a Poke Body, and 1 move. Energy Guard prevents 10 damage done to Shelgon each turn if it has a basic energy on it. And then Rollout does 20 damage, but only takes colorless energies. Basically a simple defensive Pokemon here. And that leaves Shelgon number 42 with 70 HP but 2 moves. Granite Head does 20 damage and then prevents 10 onto Shelgon on the next turn. And then Flare does 40 damage, each taking a water and fire energy. So if I had to pick one of these, I would wait to see how the rest of the deck plays out first, so let's do that. Altaria is also one I already talked about from Winona's deck, the one with Dragon Dance and Dragon Song, the latter requiring water and lightning energies, so keep that in mind. For 2 Flygon, there are actually 2 from EX Dragon, so both are counted here. Flygon number 4 has a mighty 120 HP, weakness to colorless, resists lightning and fighting, and has 2 moves. Energy Shower has you attach as many basic energy cards in your hand to your Pokemon in any way, basically bypasses the 1 per turn rule. But it takes both grass and lightning to use. And then Rainbow Burn does 30 damage, plus 10 more for each type of energy on Flygon. Interesting, so this one excels if you're using all types of energies for this team. Flygon number 15 has 100 HP and no weakness or resistance, and it has a Poke Body and 1 move. Sand Guard prevents 20 damage by your opponent's attack if a heads is flipped, and doing this every turn is pretty awesome. Air Slash does 60 damage, and if a tails is flipped, you discard an energy on Flygon, and it takes both grass and lightning. And the very last Pokemon here is the ultimate Gen 3 dragon, Salamence. Naturally, we get two options from EX Dragon. Salamence number 10 has 120 HP, weakness to colorless, resists fire and fighting, and has 2 moves plus a Poké Power. Dragon Wind gives you the option of forcing your opponent to switch their active one with a benched one of their choice, unless Salamence has a status condition. Agility does 20 damage and prevents all damage done to Salamence on the next turn with a heads flip, and its main move is Dragon Claw, doing 60 damage, but requiring fire and water energies here. Yeah, it's very good if you can pull it off in time. Salamence number 19 has 100 HP, no weakness or resistance, and has a Poké Body and 1 move. Intimidating Fang says, all damage done to any of your Pokemon by an opponent's attack is reduced by 10 if Salamence is active. And finally, Dragon Flame does 40 damage, but 60 damage if you choose to discard an energy on Salamence, and requires both fire and water energies. I mean, if I had to choose one of these, it would be the Holo Rare number 10 version. It's just overall better. So that brings me back to which Shelgon version to pick, and because Salamence takes both fire and water energies regardless, I would go with the rare number 20 version. Therefore, this deck, while being all colorless types, would actually be a 4-type deck of fire, water, lightning, and grass, and even more so if you wanted to deal more damage with that one Flygon. Also, this team would need 2 Bagon, 2 Shelgon, although one is usable, 1 Swablu, 2 Trapinch, and 2 Vibrava just to make this team usable. That, on top of the 4 energies needed, actually is what puts Drake at number 4 for me. Crazy, I know. But oh man, if you can evolve them in time and get the proper energies, there are some powerhouses here. Even still, we're factoring in the card game rules here, and I just don't see Drake being better than the other 3. Am I completely wrong here? I'd like to see someone using a Drake deck going against any of the other 3 and see how it does. Then I'll admit if I'm wrong. But yeah, I'm surprisingly putting Drake at number 4. Too many things need to line up to have it excel. Number 3, Phoebe. Next up we have Ghost Leader Phoebe, and she's kind of a strange one as she uses 2 doubles on her team. Therefore we'll be counting the first 2 appearances for each of them. She uses 2 Dusclops, 2 Bayonet, and a Sableye, a 2-type deck of Psychic and Darkness. EX Sandstorm Dusclops is a Psychic type with 70 HP and 2 moves. Judgment has you flip 2 coins, and if both are heads, it's an auto KO of the defending Pokemon. Yikes. An insta-kill move if you get lucky enough. The odds of getting 1 heads is 50%, so that means getting 2 heads would add another 50%, to make it 100%. It's all simple math, folks. Therefore, Judgment will never fail. I have an English degree, by the way. Random Curse has you deal 50 damage any way you'd like on all defending Pokemon. Dusclops is one of my favorite Pokemon of all time, and yeah, big fan of this card. Sounds very fun to use. Go for the insta-kill luck, or disperse 50 damage to the defenders. Dusclops from EX Deoxys has all of the same stats and 2 moves. Psychic Removal does 20 damage, and then with 2 heads flips, all energies attached to the defending Pokemon are discarded. A nice counterpart move to the insta-kill one, but this one will always at least deal 20 damage, while Judgment is all chance. Powerful Hand has you deal the same amount of damage counters as you have cards in your hand, no more than 7. If you're strategizing around drawing cards, this Dusclops can be pretty scary, and yeah, I love both of these. I'm trying to collect all Dusclops cards, by the way. Bayonet from EX Hidden Legends is a Psychic type with 70 HP and 2 moves. Shadow Steel does 10 damage plus 20 more for each special energy in your opponent's discard pile. I mean, yikes. This is either a simple load 10 damage move or an absolute disaster for your opponent. It all depends on their deck. Darkness Chant has you put damage counters on the defending Pokemon equal to the number of Pokemon in your discard pile, no more than 6. Supposedly, the wording on this needed clarification, and it does indeed count both basic and evolution cards. I feel like the odds are pretty good that this will be dealing some damage. It's better for the late game, and even still, only needing 6 Pokemon in a discard pile can happen fairly quick. The next Bayonet isn't until EX Crystal Guardians, one of the last Gen 3 sets. It also has all of the same stats. It has the Pokébody of Safeguard, which prevents any damage and effects done to Bayonet at all times by a Pokemon EX. A real nice bonus if you're actually against some EX cards. Night Murmurs does 30 damage and then causes auto confusion if the defending Pokemon is a basic Mon. I just love all these unique moves that Ghost Pokemon have. It helps confirm that Ghost is my favorite type. And lastly, we have EX Sandstorm Sableye, a darkness type with a weakness to fighting. But right away, that kinda sucks because Sableye was known back then for having no weakness, so I call foul on this. I get that they wanted this darkness type card to stick to a fighting weakness, but I mean, it's Sableye, it's also a ghost. Supernatural allows you to look at your opponent's hand, and if they have a supporter card, you can use the effect of that card. That's situational, but really quite fun and costs almost nothing. Dark Bind does 20 damage, and then if you discard a darkness energy on Sableye, the defending Pokemon is paralyzed. It's not super flashy, but also not bad at all for a basic Mon, and come on, has pretty excellent art. This would be a pretty simple team to get going, so that's a plus for it. Only 2 Duskull and 2 Shuppet are needed for evolutions here. But while I think it would be incredibly fun to use, I kinda prefer the other 2 Elite Four members more, although I love me some Dusclops. Number 2, Glacia. Glacia is the Ice-type leader, and she actually continues the trend of using 2 doubles on her team, just like Phoebe. Some more variety would be nice, but they're also different cards after all. She has a monotype water team of 2 Glalie, 2 Celio, and 1 Walrein. As far as the 2 Glalie options, there's one from EX Hidden Legends, and the next one isn't all the way until EX Emerald. The Hidden Legends version has 80 HP, a Pokébody, and 1 move. Ice Wall prevents 40 damage from your opponent's attacks if that Pokemon has a special energy attached to it. I really like this, and it gives Glalie a nice defensive boost here. It's possible it won't even take any damage from attacks if they loaded up their deck with specials. Heavy Blizzard does 50 damage, and with a heads flip, all of your opponent's bench takes 10 damage. Very awesome, big fan of this card. Glalie from EX Emerald has 80 HP and 2 moves. Hailstone does 10 damage to all of your opponent's Pokemon, for a single colorless energy. Heck yeah, man. Super Slash does 40 damage unless it's hitting an evolved Pokemon, in which it does 60 damage. I really like both Glalie options here, they're fun stuff. For 2 Celio options, I already talked about the EX Hidden Legends one from Wallace's deck, so that one would count here too. Super Icy Wind and Skull Bash, both quite nice. Celio from EX Legend Maker has 70 HP, a Poképower, and 1 move. Power Circulation gives you the option to put a basic energy from your discard pile on top of your deck. Celio then takes 10 damage, and only if it doesn't have a status condition. I think that makes this Celio a little more valuable on the bench, always giving you the option to retrieve an energy if you need it. And its only move is Lunge Out for a basic 30 damage. I definitely like the other one more, but this one can certainly be beneficial for you if you're hurting for energies. They pair well together. And finally, Glacia uses Celio's evolved form, Walrein. EX Hidden Legends Walrein has a mighty 120 HP, a Poképower, and 1 move. Crush Draw has you look at the top card of your deck once per turn. If it's a basic energy, immediately attach it to one of your Pokemon. If it's not, then it goes back on top of your deck, all unless Walrein has a status condition. Yeah, that's really quite good. And Sheer Cold does 50 damage, and with a heads flip, the defending Pokemon can attack on the next turn. Yeah, this Walrein means business. But the definite downside to Glacia's deck is that all of them are evolved forms. You would need 2 Snorunt for the Glalies, plus 3 Spheal and 3 Celio, with one of them turning into Walrein. Still, this would be quite the strong team to use if you were able to get it ready in time, but I still just slightly prefer another Elite Four member's team more. Number 1, Sidney. Yeah, the rare case where the first Elite Four member actually has the best team in my opinion. Dark Leader Sidney is the only Elite Four member with a completely unique team, no doubles. I like that about him. He uses Mightyena, Shiftry, Cacturn, Sharpedo, and Absol. And there are actually 2 Mightyena options from EX Ruby and Sapphire, 1 Holo Rare and 1 Uncommon. Mightyena number 10 is a Darkness type with 1 move and a Pokébody. Intimidating Fang we've seen before. It prevents 10 damage by your opponent's attack to all of your Pokemon if Mightyena is active. A pretty awesome bonus. And then Shakedown does 40 damage, and then you select a card in your opponent's hand at random to discard with a heads flip. Yeah, not a bad start, I'd say. Mightyena number 42 has all of the same stats, but 2 moves. Bite does 20 damage, and Ambush does 60 with a heads flip, 30 with a tails flip. Very straightforward, and even though number 10 is the holo rare one, this one really isn't half bad either. It only deals damage, but potentially 60 for 3 energies. Not too bad, but yeah, I would still go with the former for the team here. And there are also 2 shift tree options from EX Sandstorm here, a holo rare and a rare. Both of them are the grass type with 120 HP, weak to fire. Shift tree number 12 has the Poké Power of Fan Away, which has you return an energy on the defending Pokemon back to your opponent's hand if a heads is flipped, and if Shift tree doesn't have a status condition. Being able to do this every turn is probably pretty annoying for them. I like it. And it doesn't even have to be a basic energy. But its only move is the costly Light Touch Throw that does 80 damage minus 10 for each energy on the defending Pokemon. So that makes Fan Away even more important to use. Shift tree 22 has Feint Attack, which has you deal 40 damage to any of your opponent's Pokemon, ignoring weakness, resistance, or any Poké Powers. And Slash does a set 60 damage. Man, tough call, but I personally prefer number 22 here. Big surprise, I know. Fan Away on the other one is really nice, but Feint Attack needing only colorless energies for a pretty sweet attack makes this one my choice. Also, Slash will always do 60, while Light Touch Throw can vary. EX Sandstorm Cacturne is a grass type with 80 HP, 1 move, and a Poké Body. Poison Payback is an auto poison on the defending Pokemon if it deals damage to Cacturne while active. Probably my favorite Poké Power or body thus far. That's awesome. That could scare your opponent to not even want to attack. And its only move is Feint Attack, working exactly the same as Shift trees. 40 damage to any Pokemon you want. And on top of all of that, Cacturne only uses colorless energies. This card was absolutely made for me. I mean, wow. Of every card I've talked about in this video, this is my favorite one. Next is our lone water type here on the team, Sharpedo from EX Ruby and Sapphire. It has the Pokébody of Rough Skin, which has you put 2 damage counters on your opponent's Pokemon if it attacks Sharpedo while active. Also really awesome. Dark Slash does 40 damage, but it does 70 if you choose to discard a Darkness energy on Sharpedo. Sharpedo is also all about dealing damage, and I'm a fan, even though it's randomly introducing a water type here. And lastly, we have Absol from EX Dragon, a 70 HP darkness type with 2 moves. Bad news is just like Skarmory's Pick-On move. If your opponent has at least 6 cards, you can choose which ones to discard until they are down to exactly 5. And then Prize Count does 20 damage, but if you have more prize cards left than your opponent, it does 40. Absol is a cheap to use, pretty decent basic mon to round off the deck. So yeah, I really like Sidney's team. Absol is the only basic one here, and you'd also need Poochyena, Cacnea, and Carvanha for the other 3, and then Shiftry needs both Seedot and Nuzleaf out in order to use. But still, I think this would be a scary team to be against, and it's personally number 1 of the 4 for me. So what do you think? Would your Gym Leader or Elite Four rankings differ a bit from mine? Again, this is my first time seeing almost all of these cards, so I would fully admit if there's something I'm not seeing right away. I only knew of the Dusclops cards before writing this out. I also think we're starting to see some of that beloved power creep here too. I bet the majority of these teams would be better than the Kanto or Johto ones I talked about before, and it will only get like that even more as we progress. I'm looking forward to eventually making the Sinnoh rankings next, but I'll see you all for whatever video idea I decide to do. Paraspectre will return.